Hi readers, Lee here. Welcome back to my channel, Lila Wanders and Reads. I'm here with a medium cup of coffee, and the light on this side of my face is going to be really bright because it's mid-afternoon. Anywho, today's Book Talk Tuesday, if I hadn't said it already, and last week, in a response comment to my weekend books, Forever Mood Reading made a comment about one of the books that I read, Iron Lake by William Kreuger. I'm not going to bring that over here because it's not about him. She said, they said, not sure how I feel about Kreuger writing about a culture that's not his own. That's not for him to write. And that's fair. And I think I assumed that because his main character in that series, and that's the only book of his I've read, was part white and part Native American, that he was too, but then he wasn't. So I did a little digging and, looked at some of the criticism, and then I found an individual who recommended some books to read in addition to or instead of Kreuger. So I bought 4 of the ones he recommended, and then I also have to talk to you about some books that were already in my collection, one of which I have not read, 4 of which I have. All are Native American voices, or indigenous voices, and I thought it was time to highlight these individuals. It's been a while, probably since last year I wasn't doing videos this time last year. Anywho, it's been a minute, so let's talk. The first book that I picked up is In the Night of Memory by Legarde Grover, and this one does not have a blurb on the back. It's got some, I forget what they call them, shout outs, I guess, and then a brief paragraph. So let me pull up my phone and read to you what this one's about. When Loretta surrenders her young girls to the county and then disappears, she becomes one more missing Native woman in Indian country's long, devastating history of loss. But she is also a daughter of the Mose Point Reservation in northern Minnesota and the mother of Azure and Rain, ages 3 and 4, and her absence haunts all the lives she has touched and all the stories they tell in this novel. In the Night of Memory returns to the fictional reservation of Legarde Grover's previous award-winning books, introducing listeners to a new generation of the Galette family as Azure and Rain make their way home. I'm going to stop there because I have a lot of books to talk about. I did not know that this is not the first of her novels. Usually when I read an author that has a setting in the same place, I like to start at the beginning, but in this case, I guess I won't. Let's see. So, Linda is a member of the Bois Forte Band of Ojibwe and is the award-winning author of several books, including The Road Back to Sweetgrass, which I would have gone out and bought this afternoon if they had it at my local Barnes & Noble. The next novel I want to talk about is Indian Horse by Richard Wagamese. I haven't heard of either of these 2 authors. The third one I'd heard of but had not read. Richard Wagamese was one of Canada's foremost writers and one of the leading Indigenous writers in North America. In Indian Horse, Saul Indian Horse is a child when his family retreats into the woods. Among the lakes and the cedars, they attempt to reconnect with half-forgotten traditions and hide from authorities who have been kidnapping Ojibwe youth. But when winter approaches, Saul loses everything: his brother, his parents, his beloved grandmother, and then his home itself. Alone in the world and placed in a horrific boarding school, Saul is surrounded by violence and cruelty. At the urging of a priest, he finds a tentative salvation in hockey. Rising at dawn to practice alone, Saul proves determined and gifted. Yet as his victories mount, so do the indignities and the taunts, the racism and the hatred, the harshness of a world that will never welcome him. This looks really, really good. And it's relatively short, 221 pages. So I will get to this hopefully soon and let you know what I think about it. I say soon, but not as soon as this one that I'm going to read. This is Marcie R. Rendon's Murder on the River. This is a cash black bear mystery. The individual who was doing the interview where he recommended books to read instead specifically mentioned this mystery series as a counterpoint to Kreuger's Iron Lake series. Whew, glasses. So this series introduces Cash Black Bear, a young Ojibwe woman whose visions and grit help solve a brutal murder. And so this is a debut novel and large font, so this may be my first read for October. Copyright 2017. 1970s. Red River Valley between North Dakota and Minnesota. Renee Cash, Black Bear, is 19 years old and tough as nails. She lives in Fargo, North Dakota, where she drives truck for local farmers, drinks beer, plays pool, and helps solve criminal investigations through the power of her visions. She has one friend, Sheriff Wheaton, her guardian, who helped her out of the broken foster care system. One Saturday morning, Sheriff Wheaton is called to investigate a pile of rags in a field and finds the body of an Indian man. When Cash dreams about the dead man's weathered house on the Red Lake Reservation, she knows that's the place to start looking for answers. Together, Cash and Wheaton work to solve a murder that stretches across cultures in a rural community traumatized by racism, genocide, and oppression. So Marcie Rendon is an enrolled member of the White Earth Nation, and it talks about other stuff that she's prizes and stuff like that. She lives in Minneapolis. I don't know anything about the White Earth Nation, but if this is as good as it sounds on the back, I'm going to try to read this first in October. And then, maybe, this is a standalone book that I think was on my book of the month. Maybe it wasn't. No, maybe it was. Copyright 2024, also by Marcie R. Rendon, Where They Last Saw Her, a novel. I almost picked this up, but I cannot remember why I didn't. Quill has lived on the Red Pine Reservation in Minnesota her whole life. She knows what happens to women who look like her. Just a girl when Jimmy Sky jumped off the railroad bridge and she ran for help, Quill realizes now that she's never stopped running. As she trains for the Boston Marathon early one morning in the woods, she hears a scream. When she returns to the search area, all she finds are tire tracks and a single beaded earring. Things are different now for Quill than when she was a lonely girl. Her friends, Punk and Galen, are two women who don't know what it means to quit. Her loving husband, Crow, and their two beautiful children challenge her to be better every day. So when she hears the second woman has been stolen, she is determined to do something about it, starting with investigating the group of men working the pipeline construction just north of their homes. As Quill closes in on the truth about the missing women, someone else disappears. In her quest to find justice for all of the women of the reservation, she's confronted with the hard truths of their home and the people who purport to save them. When will she stop losing neighbors, friends, family? As Quill puts everything on the line to make a difference, the novel asks searing questions about bystander culture, the the reverberations of even one act of crime, and the long-lasting trauma of being considered invisible. A theme in many of these books is missing and murdered indigenous women and girls. And I will talk more about that when I talk to you about Medina and Indian Burial Ground. I already owned this book. I got that. I think I got this in a Nightworms package sometime this year, but I had already had this on my list to pre-order if I wasn't going to get it in some of my other subscriptions. Medina is a member of the Tunica Biloxi tribe of Louisiana, and he, in his debut novel, which we'll talk about later, he draws on personal and family experiences along with research into the missing and murdered indigenous women and girls epidemic. This is his second novel that I'm aware of. It published this year. All Nomi Broussard wanted was a fresh start, with a new boyfriend who actually treats her right, and a plan to move from the reservation she grew up on. Just like her beloved Uncle Louis before her, things are finally looking up for Nomi, until the news of her boyfriend's apparent suicide brings her world crumbling down. But the facts about Roddy's death don't add up, and Nomi isn't the only one who suspects that something menacing might be lurking within their tribal lands. After only a decade away, Uncle Louis has returned to the reservation, bringing with him a past full of secrets, horror, and what might be the key to determining Roddy's true cause of death. Together, Nomi and Louis set out to find answers, but as they get closer to the truth, Nomi begins to wonder whether it might be best for some secrets to remain buried. This one's pretty long. I just have not gotten around to it yet this year. I've been reading so much, and it won't be soon because I'm going to go with Murder on the Red River before that one. So next, I've got 4 books that I read over the last couple of years. They are all blurred together. So if I say I read something last year and it was really 2022, it is what it is. First up, Bad Cree by Jessica Johns. This was also, because I've got a book plate, also came in my Nightworm subscription package. If you don't have a subscription and you're interested in horror, check it out. You can look at them up on Instagram at Nightworms. I read this, I'm trying to figure out when it was published, 2023, so last year, and that last year is when I read it. When Mackenzie wakes up with a crow's head in her hands, she panics. Work text. Only moments earlier, she had been fending off masses of birds in a snow-covered forest. In bed, she blinks and the head disappears. Night after night, Mackenzie's dreams return her to a memory from before her sister Sabrina's untimely death. A weekend at the family's lakefront campsite, long obscured by a fog of guilt. But when the waking world starts closing in, too, a murder of crows stalks her around the city. She emerges retching water from a nightmare of drowning, and she gets threatening text messages from someone claiming to be Sabrina. Mackenzie knows that this is more than she can handle alone. Traveling north to her rural hometown in Alberta, she finds her family still grappling with the same grief she ran away to Vancouver to escape. I am having a hard time talking today. They welcome her back, but their shaky reunion only it seems to intensify her dreams and make them more dangerous. What really happened that night at the lake? And what did it have to do with Sabrina's death? Only a bad Cree would put their family at risk. But what if whatever has been calling Mackenzie home was within her all along? I don't remember what really happened that night at the lake because it's been a while and I've read a lot. And if I do a reread of this at some point in the far-off future, it will be a surprise to me. Next up is Nick Medina's, I'm sorry, I've been meaning to do this for every person and I have not. Jessica Johns is a Nahiya auntie and a member of the Sucker Creek First Nation in Treaty 8 territory in northern Alberta. I've already talked to you about Nick Medina, and this is his debut novel, Sisters of the Lost Nation. I liked this. I did not love it, but for a debut, it was really good. And that is why I had planned to pre-order Indian Burial Ground, because this is a writer I want to keep not tabs on, but I want to keep on my radar and keep reading as he grows as a writer. Anna Horn is constantly looking over her shoulder for the bullies who torment her, for the entitled visitors at the reservation's casino, and for the nameless, disembodied entity that stalks her every step, an ancient tribal myth come to life, one that's intent on devouring her whole. With strange and sinister happenings occurring around the casino, Anna starts to suspect that not all the horrors on the reservation are old. As girls begin to go missing and the tribe scrambles to find answers, Anna struggles with her place on the res, desperately searching for the key that she's sure lies in the legends of her tribe's past. When her own little sister disappears, Anna will do anything to bring Grace home. But the demons plaguing the reservation, both ancient and new, are strong, and sometimes it's the stories that never get told that are the most important. So, again, really enjoyed this enough that I knew I was going to buy his second novel, and I did. I have saved my favorite for last. These are completely different books, different genres, but both of them really resonated with me for one reason or another, and I'll talk about each of them. First is Amanda Peters' The Berry Pickers. I believe this is a debut also. This was published in 2023. I think I read it in like December, one of the darker months, because I did a Instagram video and it was dark outside when I finished it. Amanda is a writer of Micmac and settler ancestry. That's all I know. Everything else is stuff. So one of the things that I say a lot is show, don't tell. But the Berry Pickers for me, and this is difficult to explain, this was like sitting around in the living room by a fire, listening to someone tell you a story, which is a different experience from having an author tell you. This was like a story. It gave me that vibe. I know, it's difficult to explain, but there is a difference between an author telling you everything and someone telling you a story. I could feel that vibe when I was reading. A 4-year-old Micmac girl goes missing from the blueberry fields of Maine, sparking a tragic mystery that haunts the survivors, unravels a family, and remains unsolved for nearly 50 years. July 1962. Following in the tradition of indigenous workers from Nova Scotia, a Micmac family, apologies if I'm mispronouncing that, arrives in Maine to pick blueberries for the summer. Weeks later, 4-year-old Ruthie, the family's youngest child, vanishes. She's last seen by her 6-year-old brother Joe, sitting on a favorite rock at the edge of a berry field. Joe will remain distraught by his sister's disappearance for years to come. In Maine, a young girl named Norma grows up as the only child of an affluent family. Her father is emotionally distant, her mother frustratingly overprotective. Norma is often troubled by recurring dreams and visions that seem more like memories than imagination. As she grows older, Norma slowly comes to realize that there is something her parents aren't telling her. Unwilling to abandon her intuition, she will spend decades trying to uncover this family secret. This is one of my favorite books of 2023. I'm checking this other book before I talk about it. Okay, that was 2022. I absolutely adored this. When I look at the cover, I just get a good feeling. It's bittersweet. Your heart aches for the characters, some of them more than others. It's told in multiple viewpoints. I just found something that made me sad. I just adored this. I recommend reading it in winter when it's dark outside and it's a little chilly. It's just, even though it's set in the summertime at the beginning, it just gave me a good sitting around the fire listening to a story vibe. Another thing that I like is a fucked up main character. And what I mean by that is a main character who is flawed and struggles and tries to do better, but is not always successful, but she doesn't give up. And for me, White Horse by Erika T. Wurth embodies that for me. Erika is a Kenyan and Sewanee Fellow and a narrative artist for the Meow Wolf Denver installation. She's an urban native of Apache, Chickasaw, and Cherokee descent. And my work keeps texting me, so let me just tell them something. This is like the second time work has interrupted my videos. I'm going to have a talking to them about that. Alright, so, White Horse, Erika T. Wurth. Some people are haunted in more ways than one. Heavy metal, ripped jeans, Stephen King novels, and the occasional beer at the White Horse have defined urban Indian Carrie James's life so far. But when her cousin Debbie finds an old family bracelet that once belonged to Carrie's mother, it inadvertently calls up both her mother's ghost and a monstrous entity, and Carrie's willful ignorance about her past is no longer sustainable. Haunted by visions of her mother and hunted by this mysterious creature, Carrie must find out what happened to her mother all those years ago. Her father, permanently disabled from a car crash, can't help her. Her Annie Squeaker seems to know something, but isn't eager to give it all up at once. Debbie wants to help, but her controlling husband keeps getting in the way. Carrie's journey toward a long truth denied by both her family and law enforcement forces her to confront her dysfunctional relationships, thoughts about a friend she lost in childhood, and her desire for the one thing she's always wanted but could never have. I absolutely loved this book too, and it's completely different from the Berry Pickers. Different genre entirely. But one of the things I loved was her cousin Debbie. They had such a fun relationship, but fun interactions. Like Carrie says, "Jesus, Debbie, if you're not going to let it go, spit it out." And she just both of them made me laugh out loud several times in this book. Although this isn't a comedy, this is it's like life. There is funny parts and there are sad parts. And there are parts that in between. I wish I could cry, but I can't. I'm broken that way. Just fucking broken like the clock on the wall. Stopped in time. But she rocks me and rocks me like a sleepy child, and I let her. I talked about this in a video I did a couple weeks ago about Let's Talk Horror. This is one of my defining books of horror that I've read in the last 5 years or so. Really love this book. If you like horror, I do recommend it. I don't do content warnings. Also, I don't remember all the details about the book. But, anywho, those are some of the books that I have now that are written by Indigenous personnel or Native Americans. I have many more. These were the ones that I could find or easily put my hands on. If you have any other recommendations, I was really excited by Forever Mood Reading's comment because they led me to an article which led me to a book that an author I hadn't heard of, and now I'm excited to read that book. So I'd love to hear your suggestions. If you have any thoughts on this video, except for the fact that I'm all over the place and my mouth is not working, or even if you want to talk about that, please leave them below in the comments. As always, I am having a hard time this weekend with my videos. I had a dentist appointment Friday, and so it's kind of made things difficult for me. But as always, I will put links to all these books down below in the description box, links to bookshop.org, where if you buy from them, you can support a local independent bookseller. And I might get a kickback if you buy something there, but I don't know anything about how much or anything like that. Anywho, I'm going to stop rambling now. I will be back tomorrow to do my September reading recap. Until then, happy reading.